Hey everyone, my name's Tomato Anus, also known as Dude Who Really Needs a Haircut. And this is a new video series I'm starting up where I'm pretty much going to be watching old speedrun explains of mine, or like videos I consider to be official video releases. So like back in the day, it's a bit wishy-washy on exactly what that will be. I'll be jumping around, but it'll be chronological order. I'm going to start with this one, which is the first video I consider to be in the Speedrun Explained series. But skipping most of these, I'll probably do Speed Cuck next. And then pretty much anything that's like a video that I like actually put effort into. A lot of these are just VODs that I ripped, but like these I'll watch. All my Speedrun Explains, and the main purpose of it is to kind of revisit these videos that I haven't watched in years. As soon as I upload a video, I just don't really watch it anymore. I've rewatched like one video that I've made ever, I think, after I've released it, and I think it was the Stardew Valley one. So I feel like that I'll probably be able to take a lot away from revisiting these old videos, seeing things that I had ideas for in the past that I might have dropped, maybe get inspiration from things, learn, pick up better ways to explain things, just kind of revisit, see what I can figure out. I have a notebook, take notes with. This is going to be my my note keeping book for myself, my personal use, where I will be writing down all my notes and whatnot. And yeah, this is going to be a video series. I'll probably do a video a month on and release it for Patreon exclusively, but I'm really going to be releasing this first video publicly just so people can see what it might be like. And yeah, if people want more, they can join the Patreon and get one of these a month. These will probably be a bit longer since like the videos itself are longer. I'm going to be pausing and talking about things, maybe talking about the actual creation of it. This first one will be a bit light on that because I did it all in one take, which I'll get to. But yeah, these will be exclusive to Patreon, one a month. But then I'm thinking that a year after release, then I'll make them public on Tomato Anus, my second channel, which it is uploaded publicly on right now. I'm recording this on March 22nd, 2023, just to give you an idea of time frame. So yeah, this one will be up end of March 2023, I think. But the next one you probably won't see publicly till April of 2024. But yeah, so that's about it. So guess I'm just gonna start. Let me also get my notes ready. All right, so this video uploaded April 13th, 2018, a while ago. It was really my first formal attempt at making a speedrun explained where I actually where I actually sat down and recorded commentary in post. There's a lot of background to this actual speedrun and how it came to be, but I'm sure I'll touch on that throughout the video. I'm sure there's references, but if not, I'll talk about it. But yeah, this one, just up front, this was not scripted. This was all one go. Every other video I've done has been scripted. I've stopped recording and whatnot, like edited lines and whatnot, record one or two lines at a time. But this was just, I talked for 56 minutes straight into my my blue Snowball microphone in my college, senior year college apartment. So yeah, let's get going on it. Hey guys, this is Tomato Anus. I have this run that I really want to do commentary over because it's kind of a really important run to the Fallout 4 speedrunning community, and you'll see why in a bit. But yeah, let's get started. So this is a any percent speedrun of Fallout 4, which means glitches are allowed. If that's not your cup of tea, I do have glitchless speedruns on my YouTube channel that you can go and watch, but this run will include glitches. The caveat is like you can't use console commands and you can't like have any pre-made saves. So any saves you see me loading during this speedrun are saves that I made after I pressed new game, and they're all with the character.
that I started this run with. The
The first thing I just made a note on is I like how, first off, it's funny. I even in 5 years ago, I use if that isn't your cup of tea, because to this day I still do that with when talking about the glitchless alternatives. Um, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I like how this video jumps right into the run. My current videos, I have a lot that I kind of preface with as I um try and cater more towards a casual audience, try to have every video be entirely contained where you can watch it even if you've never played or seen the game before, you get an idea for it. Entirely self-contained video. Um but I do think that there's something lost in that with the newer videos where in my older videos it was the run up to the run and the explanation was just the how long it took to launch the game. And I kind of miss that, and that's actually something I'm starting to try and look for Windows to do now. Try and keep the intro a bit more brief. Makes it easier for viewers to get hooked into the run right away. So yeah, that was the first thing I made a note on.
First thing you're going to notice that the run is in French. That's because French is 11 seconds faster than English, and playing as the male in French is the fastest combination of gender and language. So we play as the French male. You'll notice in the top right corner, my frame rate is limited to 60. That white number, that's my frame rate. We cap it out at 60 because this game, the physics are actually tied to the frame rate. So if you have a really high frame rate, you're going to walk faster, which means you can beat the game faster. And we wanted to make sure that everyone was kind of on equal footing regardless of how good of a PC they could afford. So we made it so all runs have to be capped out at 60. This run is done on patch 1.1.30, which is the first patched version of the game. It's not the release version, it's like the very first patch that came out. But it is an official release by Bethesda. Like, it is a patch that was available to everyone at one point. It's still available using Steam, but just so you know, we're not playing on the most current patch. We're playing on one of the earlier patches because there's a couple glitches that are like possible in this patch that aren't in others. We're playing on very easy because the lower the difficulty.
I'm going to be saying a ton in this. Gotta love verbal crutches, but I remember recording this and being like, God, you're saying a lot. God, you're saying a lot. Especially, there it is right there. I'm trying so hard not to say it right now, but hard. Like I said, I recorded this all in one go. I got the run. Let me check the dates out. The run itself was done and recorded 2 days before. So I got the run done on that day, and then I think recorded the commentary for this for the very next day, the 12th, and then released it the following day, the 13th, and it was all I was like trying to mad dash to get it out because I was in a race with another runner at the time to get the first 39. Yeah. So the commentary was very winged, but I've done the commentary for this run so many times that I kind of have it mapped out, or I did have it mapped out where I could always just jump right into it.
See, the quicker people die when you shoot them, so naturally you want to play on an easy difficulty. There's no mods installed. This is vanilla game.
Running through all the
I think that's
stuff.
about it for just like random things about the run in general, technical stuff. One thing that you'll notice is that my my timer on the left side, I use live split. I use DX story to limit my frame rate, and I think it's called RSS to customize what the frame rate counter looks like. But I use live split as my timer, and live split has a component that is able to read the state of the game at all times, and it's able to determine when the game is in a loading state, and the timer pauses itself every time it's in a loading state. because people with more money can buy a fancier computer and have shorter loading screens, which is just really unfair to some people who have to play on a laptop like myself. So as a community, we decided that.
I forgot I was playing on a laptop. So my videos these days, working with these other runners, I try to have the process be as flexible and comfortable for them as possible. I don't want them to be grinding for a run forever and, you know, banging their head against the wall. I want them to be, I want the video creation process to value their time. So I say to runners, you can segment the run, you can do it all in one shot, entirely up to you, but I typically request to not have live split up. I typically request no layout in general because I like it these days having a more clean video focusing on just the gameplay, just the speed run. And when you're segmenting runs, which the majority of the videos on my channel are nowadays, it's hard to use live split for a lot of games and have an accurate in-game time shown when you're segmenting. Just segmenting makes dealing with the timer kind of difficult. That being said, I do think that there is some value in having live split shown during the run. I do think that the viewer gets something from that. So right now I'm thinking if maybe going forward, if I'm having a runner record and I'm saying to them, yeah, if you can segment for sure, but if you don't segment, why don't we have live split up, and I can send them like a live split layout or something. It's not a bad idea. Not a bad idea sending them like a live split layout or something. One of the downsides to this though is I really like to try and have my videos explain everything that's going on, just to try and reduce and minimize the number of comments I get that are based in ignorance. So if you go back and watch all my older runs where I'm explaining runs I did, I talk about load removers in like every video to the point where it was becoming like a meme in my comments to be like, hey, what's a load remover, by the way? And talk about that. And if live split were to be reintroduced to the videos, that would be something that I would probably have to explain again. That being said, though, I've definitely been skewing more towards including information like that on screen as like a note. So, for example, in the video that I'm working on at the moment and just finishing up, there's a lot of notes that pop up during the run for like little asides. So I'm thinking that that would actually be something really good to explain in a note is load removers. Have like a stock definition of load remover or a stock note that pops up when talking about the timer and why it pauses during loading screens if the run has a timer going for it. So definitely weighing the pros and cons right now of having live split shown. I think the next video I do, which won't be for like at a minimum 4 or 5 months from now, because I already have the next couple videos recorded by the runner and whatnot. I'll start saying to the runner, if you want to do live split, great. I think that there is value in that. If not, no biggie. But I think I might start doing that again. Because I do think that that is something that a viewer would value and does value. And it adds value.
All runs must be done with, like, your official time is your in-game time, which is your time without loads included. So anytime you see my timer pause, it's because the timer itself is currently reading the game in a loading state. So you'll see that happen at typical loading screens, and then also when I do glitches like punch warps and cover slides, you'll notice that my timer pauses, and that's because the game is rendering a lot of stuff in that time span, and that makes it so that my timer is paused because I'm technically loading. So for the stats that I picked, I'm going to get into the stats, why I picked them, or what I picked and why in a second. But I first want to explain that as soon as I leave this, as soon as I leave the house, I'm going to be running straight to the vault. And when I talk to the guard outside, I'm going to say, let us in, we're on the list. And if you spam E to talk to him again, right as you finish the word list, you're able to say your line again and skip his line, and you're able to run past him right away, so that saves about like 2 to 3 seconds. But so let's talk about the stats that I picked. So I maxed out endurance, because endurance, the more endurance you have, the slower your AP will drain while you're sprinting. And naturally, we want to sprint as much as possible because sprinting is very fast. It's faster than just running, so we want to have as much endurance as possible. Similarly, we max out agility because the more agility you have, the more action points you have, the more AP you have, so you can sprint for longer. And then also you can use VATS more. And we do use VATS in the run, you'll see that in a bit. And then I put 1 point into intelligence to bring it up to 2. I don't want any more or any less. And the reason for this is that the more intelligence you have, the more XP you get when you discover things, like you discover a place or you kill someone. And every time you level up, your health and AP are completely refreshed. And we want to level up at a very specific time in the middle of the run, because we have a long running segment of about 5 minutes. And because it's so long to run, we would like to have a free AP bar in the middle where it just completely refreshes from a level up, as opposed to having to wait for the AP bar to refill itself. So we have our intelligence at 2 because that perfectly times out all the XP that we get, so that we level up during that long running segment. And I'll harken back to this later on when we get to that running segment, but it's about 20-30 minutes from now, so we don't need to really worry about it.
Definitely nitpicky of myself, of course, especially because I was freeballing it with this. But I definitely have the same mentality around explaining things as I did then, where it's like a pyramid, you know? Education is like a pyramid. You have to understand all the basics, and then the basics lays the foundation for the next level of slightly more complicated things, so on and so forth. So just making sure I'm explaining all of the basics for the runs, the stats I need, the why of it. I go into the routing a little bit here, which I really like. And I like laying the ground. I like how I laid out the groundwork for something later in the run and talked about it now. Because then when that happens later on and I bring it up, the viewer will be like, oh, right, you talked about that, and the viewer makes a connection. I don't like how much I paid attention. I don't like how much I called attention to the fact that I would be calling back to this later. And I think that that's something that, especially in my GDQ run, it's something that I kind of lean on when I'm doing live performances, which this more or less is a live performance, a recorded live performance I've talked about. I kind of, as a crutch, will say, but we'll get back to that later. But I'll harken back to that later, like I just said. And I think that is a very easy thing to overuse and lean on, and the repetition of that kind of it kind of makes someone watching or trying to learn start to go numb of like there's so many things that we're hearkening back on. And I think that it's better if you plant the seed, and rather than planting the seed and saying, this is going to be a plant, this is going to be a plant, this is going to grow up and be a plant, you just plant the seed and you return to it later. Be like, yo, remember that fucking rhubarb seed we planted earlier? Here it is. It's a rhubarb now. I don't know if a rhubarb is an actual plant that fucking grows. I don't know if rhubarb, I don't know. Just looked it up. Rhubarb is apparently like red celery. So yeah, remember that rhubarb plant seed? Like, you don't need to call attention to the fact that something will be revisited. You just revisit it. A bit redundant otherwise, and the redundancy makes people shut off a little bit. Write that all down. I think that's something that kind of not necessarily solves this, but works in place of this. Are the flashbacks that I do, where I'll foreshadow something later and then repeat, say, hey, remember when I said XYZ? And then play the clip of XYZ. I think that serves the same purpose, injects a little bit of humor. And shows that foreshadowing was there, the explanation was there, reminds people, hammers it home a second time, so maybe that understanding is a little more solid. But it's just something I don't want to overuse, and I've been trying to think of ways to do the flashback, but maybe not in such a repetitive way where people know what to expect every time from a Tomato Anus video, if that makes sense.
But we don't want any more intelligence than that, and we don't want any less. And then for the last two special points, I just dumped them into luck. That's because it's the fastest. It's the fastest skill to dump your points into, because you just hold down and right, and it like automatically goes down to it and fills it up really quickly. There's like no other special stats that benefit us in the speedrun. I know what you're saying. Oh, why don't you take strength so you could get this perk, or perception so you can get this perk? It's because no other perks than the ones we take in this run actually speed up the run in any way. Trust me, we've tested. None of them really benefit us, so we just dump them into luck because we don't really need the special points. So right now is the first.
I do like, and I still kind of do this, having lines where I say, some of you may be asking, hey, this. I think that not everything needs to be necessarily organic in the script, to where you're answering questions in a formatted way that feels natural with the flow. I think that there's a lot of room to directly address the audience. I mean, it's YouTube, you know, it's not like it's some shit that's got it. You can't break the fourth wall. I think breaking the fourth wall in this way and say, like, some of you might be typing a comment right now saying, why don't you do this? I think that calling out that exact question that you think people would be typing is really powerful.
First of two unskippable sequences in the game where we just kind of sit there and watch people. Like, we have to sit here and we watch as we get frozen, and then Kellogg comes in, and spoilers, but he kills our wife Nora and takes away Sean. There's not much we can do. So during this part, like, I'm going to take the time to explain a couple glitches that we'll use.
Speed this up just a little bit.
Throughout the run. The first is what we call either cone clipping or VLC clipping. It's up to you. I personally call it VLC clipping, and it's pretty much what we do is we grab a cone. There's several cones in the vault. We run up to them, we grab them, and then we pretty much walk into a wall while looking down and walking backwards, and the cone will push us up the wall and up into other rooms. It's a form of item clipping, which you'll see a decent amount through the game. Item clipping essentially is just like grabbing an item, looking down, walking backwards, and either just pushing yourself back up into the wall so you shoot up over the ceiling and into another room, or like you use the item to push yourself through the wall, which is less common, but it does happen. So anytime you see me having an item and looking down and like kind of turning my camera weird while walking backwards into a wall, it's because I'm clipping with the item. So that's item clipping as a whole. And then there's two other more major glitches that we use called punch warping and cover sliding, and they're both kind of ways to teleport or move very quickly from where we're standing to a different set of coordinates. So video games like Fallout, the way the game is able to tell where your character is at all times is it's always reading a set of coordinates. Your character every character has a set of coordinates like tied to them, and as you move, those coordinates change, and that's how the game's engine knows where you're standing. These two glitches are ways to essentially store a set of coordinates of where we were standing when we set up the glitch, and then later on we perform a trigger function, like a trigger action, that will either teleport us or like slingshot us back to those coordinates where we set up the glitch. So the first one that I set up is going to be punch warping, and you'll see me set it up coming up soon on a rad roach with a security baton. The way punch warping works is that when you attempt to melee attack something in VATS, the game has to pathfind for where you're standing at that moment to the thing that you're trying to attack with VATS. because you have to be able to like move to right next to the thing that you're trying to melee attack, because you can't melee attack something from 8 feet away. You have to be right next to it. So the game has to pathfind to try and figure out how to get you from position A to position B. And if you position yourself that like such that pathfinding, the game has a hard time at doing that pathfinding because the pathfinding either puts you out of bounds or inside of an object or clips you through an object, then the game has to think for a little longer than normal about how to get you from point A to point B. And if you cancel your melee attack while the game is thinking, you'll know that the game is still thinking because you kind of stay in a first-person state as opposed to going in a third person. As you'll see right here, I position myself between the wall and the boxes. And I don't really... It's like kind of a combination of first and third person. If I cancel my attack while it's doing that, now my coordinates are stored. And then...
Man, it could be because I'm watching on 1.5 speed. This is a lot of info visually and verbally. Like, yes, during the Frozen cutscene, I explained what VLC clipping is. I explained item clipping and all of that. First off, no text callouts on screen. I believe the first video where I had text pop out on screen when glitches were introduced was Mirror's Edge, which I think one of my better videos. Anyways, from what I remember, one of my better videos. Not having that text pop up on screen, not having that text pop up on screen feels like such a detriment, because I feel that having that text pop out, being able to read it as it said, hammers home, oh, VLC clipping. Okay, that's what it's called. That's what he's describing in this moment. Because when you're just listening to a string of words in terms you've never heard before, it's very easy to let your thoughts and the connections you're making fall behind by like even a half second. And then you're playing catch up and you're like, okay, but what of the terms are we actually talking about? So I really like the call outs for that reason. In this video, I think there's no editing at all other than just including my voice, my commentary. So I like the inclusion of the call outs nowadays. I would never remove those. I'm not going to say I would never change them, because who's to say that I don't come up with a more streamlined or intuitive way to do them in the future. But the lack of callouts definitely makes this more confusing. Similarly, so like I said a moment ago, it's really hard to keep track of everything that's going on. It's not just because we're watching on 1.5 speed now. I like that I explained things in advance, right? And this is something that I think I've developed over time, a solution to. But it's good to see this example because this kind of just hammered it home for me. Explaining things in advance is great. Great. If there's nothing going on, that time is best spent explaining something that will happen. But, for example, I explained VLC clipping. People might understand the concept, right? They might understand, oh, okay, yeah, he's going to grab a cone, he's going to look down, walk backwards, push up, next room. Got it. They might understand the concept, and it might be an incredibly intuitive concept, but they still haven't seen it yet. So the first time that they see it, the neurons and synapses in their brains are firing off and connecting. And it's impossible to not spend a moment when it's happening for the first time and you're seeing it for the first time visually to say, oh, this is what he talked about. And doing that in that moment, saying, oh, this is what he talked about, momentarily distracts you from the other thing that is being explained. I'm talking about coordinates, punch warping, cover sliding. All of these are higher level concepts. These are the second most complicated thing I will talk about in this video, behind load warping. And they're being explained when we are seeing the first instances of a different glitch that I described. So there, I would be very impressed with someone if they were able to watch this and connect, oh, VLC clipping is what's going on right now, and understand, like, recalling what I talked about VLC clipping, while also fully comprehending what I was talking about with punch warping and cover slide. I would be astounded if someone could get that, because that was a very difficult, as someone who is an expert in this run part in particular, that was a lot to take in. So I think that this hammers home, if you're explaining something in advance, if you're going to be explaining a different thing later, if you explain topic A in advance, then you better show a visual for topic A if you're going to be explaining topic B when topic A is happening for the first time. So that way people have not only the definition in their head, they have a visual representation that they can be like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that concept. I understand it. Next time I see it, I get it. I don't need to think about it. Because it's just too much to ask a viewer to connect one concept while intake information on a different concept. So I like that. That's actually really good to understand. And I or have hammered home. And I try to, I think that that's something that I kind of have picked up on, because I have like preview windows that pop out now at times. But I don't think I've explored that idea enough, of the preview windows that pop out. It makes the videos very messy visually in terms of a lot of things going on. But I think if you organize the commentary correctly so that a visual could pop out during maybe a more calm moment. Yeah. I just think that showing visuals in advance, be it during paused segments like I do often now, or even just popping out for a quicker thing. Like, again, I know that I didn't do it because I had like zero editing skills at this time. I honestly think that at this moment I had like the bare minimum knowledge of how to use Sony Vegas. I had like Sony Vegas 2014 or something. I had the bare minimum amount of knowledge as to I knew how to end a clip and move a different clip so that they transition to one another. I think that's all I knew. So it would be a lot to ask of 2018 Tomato Anus to throw up a visual of a VLC clip happening during that freezer segment. But I do think that would have been the right way to do it. In thinking now, in my 2020 video covering this run, I don't know if I showed a visual example for VLC clipping when I explained it, which would probably be wrong to do. Wrong to not do. Interesting.
Next time I attempt to melee attack something in VATS, I'll get teleported to those coordinates, which you'll see me do in a little bit. But right now, I'm also going to set up what's called a cover slide. And the way a cover slide works is exactly how I just demonstrated. I aim around a corner right here, and I enter third person and stop aiming at the same exact...
That's really bad. That's really bad. You do not... I hate that I did that. Hate that I did that. That... My friend group and I, we have a running joke from high school. This is like a 10+ year running joke now. There was a kid in our math class, or a kid in our grade. Let's say his name was like Joey, right? And in like pre-calc or whatever, teacher asked the class, "Okay, what do you do? How do you solve this problem?" And Joey just goes, you solve it." So my friends and I, to this day, always will be like, "Oh, what should we do in this situation?" "Oh, just solve it." It's like, it's like, why don't homeless people just buy houses? Saying This is done by exactly what I just demonstrated. That does nothing for the viewer. That is just like, that is one, confusing, two, just wasted time that could be spent actually explaining it. Because I said it's done exactly how it was just demonstrated. And then I explain afterwards. I should explain first and then say, if you're even going to include the how it was just demonstrated line, you have that be the last part.
Get teleported to those coordinates, which you'll see me do in a little bit.
Bad.
But right now, I'm also going to set up what's called a cover slide. And the way a cover slide works is exactly how I just demonstrated. I aim around a corner right here.
That is so bad.
And I enter third person and stop aiming at the same exact time, and that stores my coordinates of where I was standing. And that time, it's instead of being tied to melee attacking something in VATS, it's tied to having my gun out while I'm in first person. So the next time I take out my gun while I'm in first person, I get slingshotted back to the coordinates of where I was standing. And punch warping and cover sliding, they're slightly different because punch warping teleports you to where you were standing, or the coordinates, whereas cover sliding slingshots you. They each have their pros and cons. Cover sliding is good because, as you're about to see, I'm going to stand on a certain rock and pull out my gun, and it'll slingshot me across the map, and while I'm getting slingshotted, I travel through Sanctuary, and that actually discovers the map location of Sanctuary, so I can fast travel to it later, rather than having to fast travel to Vault 111 and run to Sanctuary. So that saves 17 seconds because I discovered Sanctuary on this slide. Cover sliding also, like, it's also kind of bad in the sense that you can bump into objects along the way that throw off your trajectory, and you often die from fall damage from it. Whereas punch warping, because you get teleported straight to an object, you can't discover any objects along the way or any locations along the way, but typically it's safer because we're able to find a set of coordinates that safely land us on the ground or under the map, in which case if we get teleported to under the map, then we get teleported back up onto the map once we fall far enough down, which is exactly what I'm about to do right here by attempting to melee attack this raider in VATS. Right now I'm teleported pretty much to the center of the map. You'll notice my timer is paused. That's because the timer is sensing.
I think that a good way, and if I were making a new Fallout 4 explanation video in the year of our Lord 2023, I think that what I would do, let me make a note for this. So I think that when I'm explaining punch warping and cover sliding, that's a lot to keep track of as a viewer, especially if these are brand new concepts to you, especially because they're very similar concepts. So what I would probably do now, and what I might do if I cover a run where there's something similar to this, where there's two concepts kind of being explained in tandem, is to have definitions for them pop up on screen, maybe on the side, with maybe a note like cover slide, gun setup in parentheses, store coordinates and slingshot / slide to them, punch warp, parenthetical, that's set up, store coordinates and teleport / warp to them. Kind of have those pop out, maybe have them like change color or something when they're set up, or maybe have like a setup with like an underline and like a check mark when they're set up, and then when they're activated have them like change color or gray out to show that they're no longer set up, you know. I think that would actually be a great way for a viewer to actually be able to follow what's going on both actively and behind the scenes.
The game in a loading state because the game is technically loading right now. It's loading the middle of the map. And while I fall down, I spawn up right next to this big green building, which is Green Tech Genetics, which is perfect because we actually need Green Tech Genetics for later on in the game. So we discovered that fast travel location, and you might have noticed that as soon as I discovered Green Tech Genetics, I made a quick save, and that's because when I enter a sewer coming up here, I'm going to do a glitch called a load warp, but load warps take a little bit to explain, and it's not really necessary why I'm load warping right now. So right now I need to explain something else that's going on, which is getting the last quest in the game. So when I spawn in on the other side of this sewer's load zone, I'm immediately going to quit to the main menu and reload the autosave that the game made when I enter the sewer. And what this will do is actually load me in at the top of the water inside of the sewer. And it turns out that the top of the water is out of bounds because the top of the water is outside of the pipe that we were in. And if I just swim right over to this location right here and drop down, I discover the nuclear option, which is the last quest in the Fallout 4 main quest, which is perfect because the point of this any percent speedrun is to beat the main quest of Fallout 4. So now we have the main quest, the last quest in it, so why don't we just go and finish it right now? Well, in order to finish it, we need to enter the Institute. And in order to enter the Institute, we need to build a teleporter. And in order to build a teleporter, we need to decode the Courser chip. And you can see where this is going. There's a long to-do list of things that we need to complete. And we pretty much have to jump through all these hoops that the game is set up for us. So we can't go finish the game right away, but at least we have a big piece of the game, a big piece of the main quest ready for us to complete.
I liked what I was doing there up until a certain point, I was explaining the reasoning for the route. We have the last quest in the game. Great. Why can't we finish the game then? Well, in order to finish the game, we need to be in this location. Okay, so why don't we just go there? Well, to get there, you need to do this. Okay, well, why don't we just do that? Well, in order to do that, you need to first do this. And I really liked that I did that because it helps explain the reasoning for the route and why, for example, if there were a big door and you can clip through things, why you can't, like, why people would just say, why don't you just clip through the big door? I wished that I went into the full reasoning there. The full reasoning as to why you can't just go to the end of the game. And I almost got there, but then I kind of hand waved it at the end, which there is a lot of hand waving in these videos that I make. There's a lot of, it kind of works like this, but I think hand waving is appropriate when simplifying a complex topic to the viewer, where the nitty-gritty details aren't necessary to understand the concepts. But I think that hand waving away details for why things are the way they are like this, like, that's a valuable question that a viewer might have is, okay, why? But why, like, why can't you just do that? Because I said, you can see where this is going, but they might not. That's an assumption on the viewer's end. You can see where this is going. So, whereas, like, for example, hand waving in the sense of talking about an overly complex game, like, or even topic like load warping, right? It's not that I dumb it down, because I don't. I try to keep topics as, I try to explain things as accurately as possible, and I feel like dumbing it down is a disservice to a viewer because the viewer's there to learn and see how crazy this shit is. But I think that it's like with math and imaginary numbers, you know? Like, there's a bit of hand waving when you're explained numbers in general. Like, yep, these are all your numbers, whole numbers, fractions, decimals, and like integers. But there's more to that. There's imaginary numbers, you know? So it's less like, the hand waving is good for not going into unnecessary detail, but it's bad for leaving a breadcrumb trail for the viewer to try and connect on their own, if that makes sense. That's kind of what I'm trying. I'm gonna write this down. Ready?
But in order to go through and like jump through all these hoops that the game has set up for us quickly, we need to do some shopping first. And you may have noticed that I haven't really done any looting or gotten any caps, but luckily, because we're playing on patch 1.1.30, there's the vendor glitch that everyone rushed to do when the game first came out, but Bethesda quickly patched out. So the way the vendor glitch essentially works is I
Something I've thought about a lot. People often tell me that my videos are. It depends on the video and the run. Some runs are very packed with jokes, and videos are very packed with jokes and dry humor, because some runs just lend themselves better to that. The video that I'm just working on right now and releasing is Hollow Knight, and that run, for as it's like an hour plus video, there's very few jokes in the actual commentary. Like, sure, there are some there, but it's not like there's a lot fewer jokes. It's not that there isn't potential for humor. It's just the run itself lends itself a lot more towards focusing on technical explanation. On the flip side, something like Hitman 2, that run is just the jokes write themselves for that. And I think back to these Fallout 4 runs a lot when thinking about what balance of jokes and whatnot there should be. And I've kind of come to the conclusion of just letting, if I think of a joke, just put it in, but don't force it. Like, there are very few jokes in this video. from what I remember. And I think that was kind of like the first kind of cheeky comment of, we're gonna do the glitch Bethesda everyone rushed to do before Bethesda patched it out. That's just like a little cheeky comment. But there's really not many jokes in this video. But people would comment all the time about those hard hitting jokes, like the three of them, the two of them. The big one that is the Kellogg one that we'll get to in a bit. And people walk away with it being like, man, that was people have told me like, man, that video was fucking hilarious. I'm like, there's like 2 jokes in it. Like that's crazy. So that's something that as I watch more of these videos, I'm interested in seeing how that kind of evolves over time. I definitely think they've gotten more referential. At least they get more referential once they became more actually scripted things, because like I said, this was entirely unscripted. As soon as I made the jump to scripting with like Doom, Dishonored, that's when I had a lot more time to actually think of jokes, write them down, not just do it in the moment, not improv it. This isn't really improv. Yeah, I just had to mention that. That's something interesting. God, we have a lot of this video to cover still.
I think it's underflow. You're pretty much like buying and selling a bunch of bullets in a specific order to underflow like the game. I think it's underflow. I'm not sure. I'm not into computer science. I'm a chemical engineer, so I don't really know underflow versus overflow and stuff. But pretty much we're able to get infinite store credit by buying and selling bullets in a
humble brag. What a douchebag.
Specific order. And with this infinite store credit, we're essentially going to like rob her of all these valuable items we need. The first item I looked for was a biometric scanner. Unfortunately, she didn't have one, and I looked for a biometric scanner because it's required to beat the main game, or the main quest, because we need a biometric scanner when we build a teleporter later on. Luckily, there's a backup scanner we can get later on, and I'll talk about that when we get there. But some other things that
Another example, I'll talk about that when we get there. That is totally an unnecessary phrase. I can just say, luckily there's a backup scanner later on. Leave it at that. Next sentence.
I bought.
Again, I'm being really nitpicky for something that I said in the moment, but that's the point of this.
I bought Buff Out, which is a random spawn on her because that increases. I bought it because it increases my endurance by 2 when I take it. I bought Jet because Jet is required for a glitch later on because of its ability to slow down time and also increase your jump height very slightly. I bought a bunch of Radaway and Stim Packs because we need to run through the glowing sea and we will be taking damage throughout the run. I bought Destroyer's left leg because it increases my move speed by 10%, which is good because we move faster. I bought Destroyer's chest piece because it reduces the damage I take from humans by 10%, I believe, maybe 15. So that's good because we take less damage. I stole the Fat Man and Mini Nuke because we're going to need it for negotiating later on. And then I bought all of her frag mines, I bought all of her Molotov cocktails, and I bought pipe pistols and shotguns. The reason I bought the pipe pistols were because they're good for clipping. Frag mines is because we use frag mines later on throughout the game to set up and trigger punch warps because we can VATS attack a frag mine wherever it lies, so we can set up a punch warp anywhere. I bought the Molotov cocktails for a glitch that I'm about to do and also for fast combat. So normally when you enter power armor,
I don't think there was anything necessarily wrong with how I explained everything I bought and listed it off, because I listed all the things I bought. It's not something that's necessary to explain beforehand, because it's not like the viewer needs to know exactly what I'm looking for in the inventory as I'm doing it. That doesn't mean like a lot of things, most things should be explained beforehand. But for shopping like that, I think it's passable to list out things as you're doing it and after. Say, I also bought this, I bought this, I bought this. This is why. But I think that it would be very beneficial to have like on screen things pop out like shopping list, and then it's just like frag mines parentheses for this reason, Destroyer's leg for this reason, this for this reason, and have like these things populate on screen while I'm explaining it. I think that would contextualize, help the viewer actually contextualize what just happened, instead of just like having all of these things be listed at them and then later on have, for example, like we're doing the Molotov stuff right now, but say the Molotov stuff was in 15 minutes. I use the Molotov, they could be like, oh wait, yeah, did he buy that? I don't remember if he bought that. And then they would have to rewind and be like, oh, he did mention that there. I think it would just help their short-term memory a bit actually remember it. I don't expect it to have them like this be just cemented in their mind as, oh, I remember that exact list. But it'll help them be like, oh, right, that was from shopping. I just think that overall, even to this day, visuals on screen are something that I undervalue, and should look for more opportunities to use.
There's two different ways you can enter it. You either get the combat animation or the regular animation. So if I throw a Molotov cocktail as soon as I open the door to enter the Museum of Freedom, when I re-exit the Museum of Freedom at the roof next to the power armor, the cocktail will just be hitting the ground because of the way the game stores the Molotov cocktail in the air. I don't know, it's still in the air for whatever reason, just floating out there right now. It's kind of like Schrodinger's cat. But when we then get to the power armor and we go to enter it, the cocktail will hit the ground and the game will consider us to be in combat again, and then we'll get the fast 3.5-second animation for entering the power armor as opposed to an 8-second animation of us not being in combat. So it's a 4.5-second save by throwing that cocktail before we enter the Museum of Freedom. And then right here, I'm going to pickpocket Sturgis, who is a member of the Minutemen. And the reason why I shot him first is because we're not able to pickpocket him until Preston finishes a long dialogue, and by aggroing the Minutemen first, then it actually will skip all of his lines of dialogue, and I'm able to pickpocket Sturgis right away. And the item I pickpocketed off Sturgis is the Institute Relay Targeting Sequence, and that actually doesn't spawn until we get the Nuclear Option quest line, which is
This is something that I worked on a lot on the earlier Speedrun Explained videos, but I'm doing a really bad job of explaining things before they happen and as they happen. A lot of things are being retroactively explained, which I think is bad for the viewer. Currently, when I write and record my videos, I write it all out. I try and pace it out for how long I think commentary will be in advance, but the scripts are constantly being rewritten and reorganized and lines being moved around, and I'll record like a page of lines and I'll see how it syncs up, and then I go and I change around the lines, I move things around, I change the verb tenses, because I want things to be explained either before they're happening or after they're happening, so people understand when it happens. I really dislike right now how there's a lot that's happening that's, one, going unexplained, and two, being explained after the fact, because it just like, oh, I pickpocketed Sturgis. I pickpocketed past tense Sturgis because of this. And this is where pausing, which is something I started doing in the Stardew Valley video, comes really in handy, because when there is an action-packed segment, I can explain necessary things beforehand, important things beforehand, and then it buys me, like, say I spend a minute explaining something before an intense sequence. Okay, I just bought myself a minute of talking time during the sequence where I can explain other things. So I just had to call that out, because that is something that has changed drastically. That it's kind of painful to see how it was.
what we got in the sewer. And that's why we had to go to the Museum of Freedom after we went to the sewer, and we didn't just go through the Museum of Freedom as soon as we got here. And now you'll notice that I'm triggering a cover slide that
Perfect example. I'm halfway through a cover slide, and then I say, now you'll notice I'm triggering a cover slide. I guarantee most people they noticed something was going on, but they've only seen a cover slide once. What the fuck is going on?
set up as I was leaving the Museum of Freedom. And the reason I'm cover sliding in the power armor right now is for two reasons. One, we need to get to Lexington like we just did. And the second is that power armor negates fall damage, which is perfect because we don't want to die when we fall. And the power armor's right here, and we need it for a different cover slide later on. So it's nice to just leave it at the fast travel point for Lexington, because we'll always remember that it's right here, and we'll spawn next to it when we fast travel here later. But as I exit the power armor, I equip my frag mines, and I'm going to run and enter this.
Perfect example of what I talked about with the shopping list. Frag mines. When do you get frag? Oh yeah, he bought them.
The basement of Slocum Joe's, because this is actually where the loyalty quest for the railroad takes place, and we want to join the railroad, but unfortunately it's slow to go to the railroad and then do this quest. It's faster to just do it before we even know them. So I throw this frag mine up into the corner and set up a punch warp, because we're not able to attack it while it's up in the corner, so we abuse the pathfinding thing to store our coordinates up in that corner. I drop down, pop a stim pack, and then I grab Carrington's prototype right there, and Carrington's prototype's kind of bugged. You're able to drop it even though it's a quest item, and by dropping it right there, it actually updates the quest stage of Tradecraft to a point where we're able to just join the railroad. They trust us now. We just completed the quest where we were supposed to go through the switchboard, which is the location we were just in, with Deacon, which is really cool because now we can just go to the railroad and join them, and Deacon he'll act like he and I have been buddies forever. When I spawn in here, what I'm going to do then is,
again, I picked up, and this again super nitpicky, I picked up a mini nuke in there too, which is really key, and I didn't even mention it because I was trying to catch up with explaining things.
mash 4 to equip my pistol, because I don't have my scanner yet, and there is a chance that a turret that we run by right here can drop a biometric scanner if we shoot it, and kill it. So Unfortunately, in this run, I did not get the scanner, so it's like a 3-second time loss to trying to farm it off this turret real quick. But luckily, there is a guaranteed drop for a scanner later on that loses us 8 seconds to grab. But the reason, like, it's nicer to get it right here and only take a 3-second time loss, but you're rolling the dice by doing this as opposed to going straight for the one later on that loses 8 seconds. But
I think that is really good though. I explain why I'm doing something that isn't necessary in the route. I explain the time loss and gain. Like I said, I don't have a scanner. I'm going to destroy this turret because there's a chance it will have a scanner. If it has going for it, killing this turret loses only 3 seconds if it doesn't have a scanner. It's a 3-second detour to destroy this turret. But I do that first because if I succeed on this 50-50 drop, I only lost 3 seconds. But if I have to go for the guaranteed scanner spawn later on, I lose a guaranteed 8 seconds. So, like, I think that did a good job of contextualizing the routing and the backup strats and everything. So I like that. I think that for a little bit in these videos, I kind of lost track and lost sight of talking about specific time saves and routing, things like that. So I like that I talked about that there.
Pretty much our goal right now is to go to the Old North Church and meet up with the railroad.
It contextualizes a lot for the viewer.
Because the railroad is the faction that we'll side with at the end of the game, like I mentioned earlier. And luckily we just did the loyalty quest, so they'll accept us. And we have to say hi to the statue of Paul Revere. Papa Paul bless. He's the father of speedrunning. Wouldn't be here without him.
There's one of the few jokes in the video. I believe that's one of the 2 big jokes, and the other one's the Kellogg one, like I mentioned.
But we're going to drop a shotgun real quick once we get inside. Use this to clip down into the basement. If for whatever reason the railroad think it's perfectly normal for a dude to drop from the ceiling. And I guess they just stand here all day with the lights on waiting for someone to walk in. But we're going to talk to Desdemona, and Deacon will vouch for us and say, hey, he's got to be someone. He made it down here, so he must be cool. He must be some sort of like good guy because he followed the Freedom Trail, even though we didn't. But now we're pretty much going to go through this conversation with Des, where we talk about synths real quick. We acknowledge that we know they exist. And now we're going to talk to Deacon twice. The first one.
I also liked, I guess that kind of was a joke, but it's more pointing out how absurd the narrative of a game becomes if you're following the speedrun logic. And I like doing that, but I don't do it too often because it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of, I forget about it if I'm being, let me write that down. I like when the narrative implications of speedruns are talked about. Things like exactly what I just talked about in the video. Things like ditching Nora at the house by sprinting out as soon as the bombs are dropping. And I don't do that too often in videos. Oftentimes because I'll be covering a game where, like, I know the narrative of Fallout 4 in and out because I've beaten it so many times because of the speedrun and talked about it with Twitch chat so many times. But, like, Subnautica. I am so unfamiliar with that game. Covered it on the channel. I only would really know any narrative implications based on what I talk about with the speedrunner that I cover it with, you know? And that isn't always a topic that comes up, or it isn't always something that speedrunners think about. So when I have an opportunity to, I like to try and include that type of stuff in the video because it's fun connecting the actual speedrun, all the technical shit we're talking about, and saying like, yeah, all this technical shit is great. And it's kind of funny in a way with the way that it makes the game like appear now. Like if this were a normal playthrough, man, this world is crazy.
Is the dialogue he's supposed to say while you, like, right when you finish the switchboard quest. And he's going to say, all right, let's meet back up at the catacombs, which is the railroad HQ. And you're like, all right. And then right away, we just walk backwards a little bit and hit a trigger to start the next dialogue with Desdemona and Deacon, which is us joining the railroad. And then right away, I set up a cover slide on a brick wall right there, and then I made a hard save right before entering the railroad HQ.
Again, I set up a cover slide. I should be explaining that in advance.
And I'll explain in a little bit why I made the railroad HQ hard save, because that has to do with load warping, and I'll explain load warping very soon. But right when we got into the other side of the railroad HQ and actually discovered it, I pulled up my map, pulled up the perk chart, and I leveled up Action Boy and Solar Powered. I leveled up Action Boy because it increases the regeneration rate of your action points by 25%, which is good because you can sprint for longer. And I leveled up Solar Powered because I believe it's during the hours of 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It increases your endurance and strength by 2, and we want more endurance during the daylight hours because we can sprint for longer. And then I do this fast travel to Lexington and back for 2 reasons. One is that it skips Desdemona's long welcome to the railroad. It may lack the amenities we need, whatever line that she goes through, and also it offsets the day-night cycle just enough so that right now when we're about to do a long running segment, we have it's going to be daytime, which means that we'll be like under the effects of solar powered and we'll be able to sprint for longer than normal. And now what we're going to do is go to Diamond City, and kind of pretty like I think right now is when you can consider us to begin our. No, I'd say right now we're still setting up. After the radiation split is when we're kind of going to begin to like just plow our way through the main quest. We're still setting things up right now, but I'm going to walk up to Diamond City, and instead of
That's another reason I think that live split would actually be beneficial to have, because I can say I referenced the splits, and I think that that actually is good for the viewer. Let me make a note of that. I said after in the radiation split, whatever. So I like that. Helps contextual.
going in the normal way and having to go through that dialogue with Piper and Mayor McDonough, we're instead going to clip through the back with a cone. We're going to do a VLC clip, and we're going to enter Diamond City that way. And because we entered Diamond City without going through that dialogue, the game automatically says, hey, something went wrong. He skipped the dialogue. Just skip it with him. So it completely skips that dialogue of Piper and Mayor McDonough. Like, they're done talking, and Piper will be re-entering the city. And then as soon as I enter, the first thing I'm going to do is walk up a little bit and trigger my cover slide so that I can get slingshotted to right next to Nick's detective agency. And the reason I need to go here now is for 2 reasons. One is to make a hard save for load warping, which I'll explain very shortly, I promise. And the second is to enter Nick's agency and leave. And the reason I need to enter Nick's agency and leave is that
I didn't intend for it to be a joke, but this load warping continually saying, I promise I'll explain it too. I kind of like that as a running joke. I think that, like, I like that. That's just kind of goofy. Be like, and we're going to do this, I promise, and just keep bringing it up. I like that. I'm going to use. Especially if it was something I never ended up explaining. That'd be real. But I wouldn't do that at the sake of losing out of an explanation. Or just having it be super underwhelming. Like having it be like a 2-second explanation. I promise I'm going to explain it. There's just not time. Oh, load warping? Yeah, no, that's just loading and jumping while doing it. That's not what it is, but like just something super simple. First page of notes.
this essentially hits a trigger to move Nick to Vault 114, which is where you're supposed to rescue him from. And then, for whatever reason, if you come back here later after you kill Kellogg, you're supposed to talk to Nick before you kill Kellogg. But if you kill Kellogg before you talk to Nick, and you've entered Nick's agency once, then if you go straight to the agency again and talk to Nick, then, or if you go straight to the agency again right after killing Kellogg, Nick will spawn inside of the agency as opposed to inside of Vault 114, so you never actually have to go and rescue Nick. One thing you'll also notice is that right here, Piper will still be outside, and this is very important because of the fact that
I must have been drinking water there. I think I've noticed a couple points where I was drinking water.
Piper never enters Diamond City and is inside of Diamond City at the same time as we are yet. So that means that Piper hasn't triggered like the quest stage in her dialogue of talking with Mayor McDonough. That quest isn't to the stage where she's supposed to walk to her office yet. Pretty much as soon as Piper enters Diamond City at the same time as you, then also there's a flying car there, some wasteland wonkiness. But as soon as you at the same time as you, then also she's supposed there's some wasteland wonkiness. But Piper enters Diamond City
wonkiness?
At the same time as you, then also there's a flying car there, some
wasteland
wonkiness. But
I thought I was saying
as soon as you are in Diamond City at the same time as Piper, the game says, okay, Piper, go to your office right now.
What the fuck
and we abuse that fact later on by, like, when we talk to Nick and Piper. And you'll see later on. I'll continue explaining later. But let's talk about load warping right now. It's this thing that I've continually been bringing up because it plays a huge part in the speedrun. And it's a big reason as to why we're able to go so fast. Sorry, I'm taking a drink of water. So, load warping...
Do I know myself or what?
...has several components to it, and I need to first break down and like kind of fill you in on the terminology. So this game has two types of saves, right? There's quick saves, and then there's normal saves that you make from the menu. Quick saves are the ones you just like press the button for, and then you can quick load. You can only have one quick save stored at a time. Every time you quick save, you overwrite your last one. And then there's also hard saves, which are always there. It's in a list when you press load, and you can go and load any of them.
Again, this would be a great time to have definitions popping out on screen to help people keep track, because having all these terms thrown out like hard save, quick save, load warp, like this is a lot to keep track of, and the viewer would greatly benefit from that.
Additionally, every time you open a door to enter a new building, or you enter a cave to enter, like you walk into a cave entrance to enter a cave or anything like that, then there's a brief fade to black where you like kind of lose control of your character and you're entering the loading screen. It's essentially the game's way of transitioning you to the load screen in a way that both looks good, and it also prevents player movement while the game is loading, so that the player can't clip through walls by quick save, quick load spamming like you see in Fallout 3 and New Vegas. So if you make a quick save, say I made a quick save right now, and then I loaded an old save, say the one in Old North Church, and I opened that door and pressed quick load with a timing that was very precise so that the quick load registers as soon as the fade to black starts, then I'll actually stay in the position of the character like who is entering the railroad, but I'll be the character from the quick save. So I'll be the character who has already discovered Diamond City and is currently taking radiation, but I'll spawn inside of the railroad HQ. So essentially, it's a way for us to make quick saves and then take the character from the quick save and teleport them to the location of a hard save that we've already made. And on top of this, this means that you maintain all the progress you've made. So if I were to load warp right now with this character to Old North Church, I would be inside of the railroad HQ, and I would also have Diamond City discovered. And also, I would have all the health and AP that I have at that moment that I made the quick save. Also, right here is the level up I talked about earlier. Notice how my AP bar completely refreshed as I ran out. That's what we were gunning for. That's what we wanted.
Two things. First off, that second thing that I just said, this right here, that level up, this is what I was talking about earlier. What I was talking about earlier, flashback, whatever minutes and seconds ago. That's a great example for when a flashback would solve a lot of issues I have with what I just did, because people might not remember that, but showing the exact moment when I said something, well, one, it adds some humor. It refreshes the memory of, oh yeah, he did say that. So I that would be a great spot for a flashback. Second, I do really like how explaining this complex topic, load warp, what I remember flashback, the most complicated topic that we cover in this, load warping. I like that I talked about an example. Again, it's a bit hard to follow, but I feel like that's something that I don't really do too often, is explain something and provide a hypothetical where it is put into play. And I think that that's actually something that would be very beneficial to kind of do moving forward, like explaining a glitch and being like, for example, I think I do this sometimes, but I think that should be something I try and do more often, is provide examples that aren't in the run, just to help kind of hammer home an idea.
To refresh your AP to get a free AP bar of sprinting during this long running segment. Anyways, I digress. When you load warp, you maintain the HP and AP of the character from the quick save. So that's why right when I landed next to Green Tech Genetics and discovered it, I made a quick save so that the quick save had the character who had just discovered Green Tech.
Also, these are just the auto-generated captions. Almost every other video that I'm going to be watching will have actual captions that I put in, so these are a bit inaccurate.
Genetics with a full HP bar and a full AP bar, and then I sprinted past a bunch of raiders and took a bunch of damage and lost a bunch of AP, and then I load warped while I entered the sewer, and by doing that, when I spawned inside of the sewer, I was a character with full HP and full AP, and it's essentially just a way to refill our AP bar by just doing a load warp. So that's pretty much load warps in a nutshell. Let's talk about this cover slide that I just set up. So imagine the map as a square.
Did I even mention that I set up a cover slide when I was doing it? I don't remember saying, I just set up a cover slide, by the way.
And AP of the character from the quick save. So that's why right when I landed next to Green Tech Genetics and discovered it, I made a quick save so that the quick save had the character who had just discovered Green Tech Genetics with a full HP bar and a full AP bar, and then I sprinted past a bunch of raiders and took a bunch of damage and lost a bunch of AP, and then I load warped while I entered the sewer, and by doing that, when I spawned inside of the sewer, I was a character with full HP and full AP, and it's essentially just a way to refill our AP bar by just doing a load warp. So that's pretty much load warps in a nutshell. Let's talk about this cover.
Yeah, that was really bad. I did not mention that I was setting up a load warp at all while I was doing it.
Slide that I just set up. So imagine the map as a square, because that's essentially what it is. If we were to set up a cover slide in the bottom left corner and then travel to the top right corner and trigger a cover
Again, examples, good. These examples I'm providing are good.
slide, then the game will want to slingshot us back to the coordinates of the bottom left corner. Similarly, if we set up a cover slide in the bottom left corner and then travel to the top. Also, I just grabbed the scanner here. This is the 8-second time loss. Grabbing the scanner right here. Just a slight detour. Anyways.
So fucking messy. So many ideas interjecting with one another. It's so hard to follow.
If I were to set up a cover slide in the bottom left corner, travel to the top left corner, and trigger my cover slide, I'll slide down the left side of the map, which is exactly what we are setting up right now. So right after an encounter with a rad scorpion about a minute ago, I set up a cover slide on a rock, and essentially now what I'm going to do is fast...
Again, that does nothing for the viewer saying, yeah, about a minute ago I did this, because then they'll go back and have to find it. No?
Travel to Vault, or I'll fast travel to Lexington first and pick up our power armor so we don't take fall damage in this cover slide, and then I'll fast travel to Vault 111, where I'll trigger a cover slide and slide on the left side of the map. I make a hard save right outside of Virgil's cave so we can load warp to here later. Pretty much anytime you see me loading a hard save, it's me performing a load warp, and it's me traveling to the location of the hard save as the character from the quick save. So anytime you see me loading an old save, it's a load warp. But anyways, I mash E during the fade-in, and I'll be entering the power armor as I gain control of my character. And then I fast travel to Vault 111, and then I'll be entering third person and taking out my gun, and tabbing into the Pip-Boy a lot, because the Pip-Boy counts as first person. So if I'm in third person with my gun out, the cover slide won't trigger, but if I enter the Pip-Boy, the cover slide will trigger a little bit, because I enter and exit it really quickly. It's just a different way of triggering a cover slide, as opposed to just being in first person and taking out our gun.
I think if I talked about earlier... What I talked about earlier, having like the definitions of cover slide, punch warping, popping out. I think that this is like a variation of cover sliding, right? It is cover sliding, but it's a different way to perform it, trigger it, because you're triggering it in bursts. I think that this would make a lot more sense for not saying it doesn't make sense for the viewer, because it's hard for me to put myself in those shoes since I've been familiar with this topic for over 5-6 years now. If I had those definitions that popped out on the side and had something like for cover sliding, triggered when first person with gun out, and I pop that back out and be like, I'm tabbing in and out, I'm pulling up my Pip-Boy, which counts as first person, but going out, like, I think that this idea would get across a lot cleaner if there was an on-screen definition of sorts, which I really don't do on-screen definitions too much, but I think I really should. The first time I did one was in the Untitled Goose Game video, and I don't think I revisited it until the Portal 2 video, although I feel like I might have had one or two in there in the middle. Maybe part of me wanted to say maybe I had a little bit in the Demon Souls video, but I don't think I actually did. It might just be Untitled Goose Game and Portal 2. I don't know, I feel like there's a third one in the middle there somewhere. But I think that having a definition on screen is something that would be very beneficial that I should start doing some more.
Doing it this way gives us a little more distance, but the distance varies a lot. But pretty much my goal right now is to slide down the left edge of the map, since we set it up in the bottom left corner and triggered it in the top left. We're trying to slide down the left edge of the map and stop halfway at Fort Hagen, which is where Kellogg is. And we want to get to Kellogg because Kellogg is a plot point, and we need to talk with Kellogg in order to advance the main quest. So right here, I'll be landing my cover slide, and luckily we got an amazing cover slide. This cover slide is really inconsistent, and it leaves a lot up to chance. But I'm just going to jump right up here, and normally you're not supposed to be able to get to Kellogg, but we're able to kind of enter through the back door by just dropping a pipe pistol, and then grabbing it and doing a horizontal gun clip. It's just a type of clipping, just a type of clip right through that door, and then enter the elevator. I'm just going to prepare myself really quickly to talk to Kellogg, and then I'm going to drop another weapon to item clip again. So I drop one more pipe pistol, and like I said before, we're not supposed to be able to get to Kellogg, but when you incorporate item clips, you're able to get to him pretty dang fast. So just gonna grab the
Correcting myself for saying pretty damn to pretty dang
pipe pistol back up against this corner of a bookshelf. I think it's a locker actually, and then just take out my fat man and talk with Kellogg really quickly, and then loot the necessary items off him that are required to complete the main quest. Grab a military grade circuit board, view the access logs, make a quick save, and then we're going to load our save in Diamond City because we're going to load warp to Nick's agency. So as I said before, ad nauseum, like we're going to load warp and we'll be the character who just killed Kellogg, but we'll be inside of Nick's detective agency. And I do this by opening the door and pressing quick save shortly after. The timing has to be really close to perfect because there's a very small margin for error here. And as soon as I enter, normally Piper's saying saying to Nick, "Come on, Nikki," stuff like that. But we're able to skip her entire dialogue, saving about 6 to 8 seconds here, because of the fact that I mentioned earlier, the quest stage of Piper and Mayor McDonough's dialogue, where Piper needs to walk to her office, hadn't triggered yet. But now that we're in Diamond City with Piper at the same time, Piper's quest stage is now trying to tell her to go to her office. So she's not going to take part inside or in that dialogue with Nick because she's supposed to be walking to her office, and the game is just trying to figure out what she's supposed to do at that moment. So she just doesn't talk. So we talk with Nick right there, progress the main quest a little bit, and we're now going to fast travel to Good Neighbor because that's where the memory den is, and we need to go through Kellogg's memories. Now, this upcoming sequence, I have a
drinking water.
$250 bounty out for anyone who can complete.
This bounty is still out there, by the way. I actually just recently did a interview with a German gaming magazine talking about this bounty. So if you speak German, Google Tomato Anus Memory Den bounty. I just looked it up. It's on the website superlevel.de. I have a interview on there, article that I was a part of, talking specifically about this.
Find a way to skip this sequence in a way that can be applied to any percent to make the run faster, because it's a really long walking segment followed by sitting there for 2 minutes doing nothing, and it's really boring. Also, I should mention now, the reason why we didn't just punch warp or cover slide through the glowing sea to get to Virgil's cave to make that hard save is because we can only punch warp and cover slides to coordinates that we've already been to, and the coordinates of the glowing sea are so extreme that there's no other place in the game that has coordinates.
Again, talking about addressing things as they're happening and beforehand, I'm talking about a question someone likely had 5 minutes ago. Really bad.
That line up with the glowing sea, so we're not able to just punch warp through it. Anyways, in the memory den, we're going to talk with Amari right quick, and we're pretty much going to give her Kellogg's brain chip or whatever that we looted off of him. That's the thing that I needed to make sure I picked up off of him. And while she's installing that, I'm going to set up a punch warp in this corner, and I'm going to run up to the main entrance. And if I exit the main entrance right after Amari starts a certain line, or finishes a different line, depending on how you look at it, I'm just waiting for the right timing. If I exit and re-enter, then it'll skip all of Amari's lines of installing the chip into Nick's head. And in order to get back down to the basement quickly to talk to her, I'm going to trigger my punch warp on this drifter in the memory lounger real quick. And that drifter is actually Deacon if you look closely, but he's labeled as drifter when he's inside of there. He's in disguise. I'm going to finish this dialogue with Amari real quick, and then I'm actually going to shoot her to aggro her, but I'm not going to down her right away. She's tagged as essential, so she can't be killed yet, but what I want to do is shoot her to aggro her, and then from her aggroing to me, Nick will aggro to her, because Nick is our companion during this quest. And if I get Nick to aggro to her, and then Nick and I down her, then it abuses a script between the de-aggroing of...
Again, I'm going to probably stop pausing to say this, but explaining things way after the fact. I haven't even explained what I'm doing did, and it's already passed. Like, it made it so that fade to white happened immediately when I sat down, and I'm still explaining what I did, and I haven't even mentioned the effect. It's okay to have things explained after the fact like this. I'm not saying you can never do it. I should never do it. But at the very, very least, explain what it does. Because I haven't even explained what it does. I'm just getting way into the weeds.
Nick and Amari, so that as soon as we sit down into the memory lounger, the game immediately fades to white, like you might have noticed it did. Typically there's like a 30-second dialogue there that is unskippable, but if you do the series of events as I just described, then it'll skip Amari's dialogue, and you'll save about 27 seconds, because you have to account for the time that you were shooting her. But right now is part of the part that we hate so much. It's like a minute 20 of just walking over all these, I think they're called neurons, I'm not sure, I'm not a biology guy, but walking through pretty much Kellogg's memories to see what made him the person he was. Pretty cool story moment, but really bad gameplay moment because it's just really boring when you're trying to go fast. So we just pretty much...
I'm sorry, I need to tell this story. I fucking hate biology. Biology sucks. And in 8th grade, was it 8th grade? 7th grade, I almost fucking failed biology because me and this motherfucker, let's say his name was like Drew, right? His name wasn't Drew, but say his name was Drew. He and I were paired up for the cell project. It was the big project. It was like 45% of our grade, all about cells. And we had to do like a poster. It was like a project that was like 3 projects in one. We were given a list of like 5 to 6 projects that we and a partner had to do and turn in. And we got to pick what the projects of them were. Of the 5, which projects we wanted to do. And me and Drew, I did all of the fucking work for it. And me and Drew picked like poster board, paper, forget a third thing, whatever. But the morning that it's all due, Drew's like, "Oh, do you want me to turn it in?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure." His class was like earlier in the day or whatever, or he was like stopping by the classroom earlier in the day. So I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I gave it to him. Um, Motherfucker never turned it in, and just like, I don't know whatever happened. And our teacher was like, "Where's your guy's project?" I'm like, "I gave it to him to turn in." So then I had to like fucking scrap and grind for the rest of the school year to go from like a 50 something percent in biology to a B minus. Oh my God. Do I just hate, I have such an aversion to biology because of that experience. Fuck biology.
Beeline straight to the finish. There actually is a way
Chemistry and physics though.
to skip this walking segment, but the setup for it is so long that it isn't really applicable in a normal run, so we don't do it. But there is a way that we've discovered. A runner named Brongle discovered it. He finds so much crazy stuff, him and Gingenia, but he discovered a way to skip this entire walking segment, but it's slightly slower to set up than it is to actually just walk the segment. So we just walk the segment still. But then after walking for about a minute,
it involves power armor and shit. I think I actually talk about it in Speed Cucked, but that's for another day.
20, we just jump right up here, and we kind of have to wait for another 2 minutes while Kellogg talks with X688 and Sean, and pretty much it's supposed to be this big moment where you realize, oh my God, that's why no one's found the Institute, because there's no entrance. They're underground. Maybe you don't know they're underground yet, but everyone just teleports everywhere. And this is what's supposed to open up the game. This is where the game's supposed to like expand a ton, because you will have just met the Brotherhood, and also this is where like you suddenly have like a very tangible goal of teleport into the Institute, right? And really the Institute is where the game like really opens up. You're about halfway through the game then, but like in a casual playthrough, that is not in a speedrun. But this is supposed to be where you're supposed to have like an actual tangible goal, and like you see your son here, so you're like, oh my God, I'm actually close, you know? But unfortunately this scene is kind of the most hated thing in the speedrun, because you're just sitting here doing nothing. And we've done so much experimentation to try and find a way to skip this segment, but to no avail. We haven't figured out a way to do it. It's crazy the measures Bethesda went through just to make sure you couldn't get out of this part. It's like, hats off to them. It seems impossible, but you never know. But that's why I put out a $250 bounty on finding a way to skip this that saves time and is applicable in an any percent run.
Something I'll give myself credit for is I did a good job of explaining the narrative of the game throughout the run. I think that while it's not always possible, I try to do it as much as I can, because it just makes the video a bit more complete for the viewer. I think the video where I did this best is my video covering BioShock 1. I think that video, just great job. I did a great job, me and the runner, KPC Zombie. We did a great job of having the narrative of the run, the narrative of the game play out throughout the run. And I love when a run it's covering a game that has a clear narrative that's easy to talk about. I'm looking at you, the Dark Souls games. Impossible. A clear narrative that is easy to follow. There's developments and whatnot, and there's time to talk about it. I love that. I love that. I feel like it just completes the video.
Once we get out of this memory sequence, then what we're immediately going to do is shoot Amari, and we're not going to just pull out our gun and shoot her. We're going to mash VATS, because that's the quickest way to actually shoot her, is to use VATS. We're going to use VATS to shoot her, and that will actually make it so it skips all of her dialogue, because she aggroes to us immediately. And by skipping all of her dialogue, it immediately advances the quest line that makes Virgil spawn. And Virgil's a very important player in the main quest, because he's like a key component in teleporting into the Institute, because he's the one who actually gives us the plans to teleport. So right away I shoot Amari to make Virgil spawn, because the quest advances enough, and then I'm immediately going to make a quick save and load the hard save from right outside of Virgil's cave, and then I'll immediately load warp into Virgil's cave. So then I'll be the character who just went through all the memories, and I'll be inside of Virgil's cave. So now this next story beat is that
you could
we know that
tell I was drinking water.
So
you could hear me close my water bottle there, and then hear me. So
now this next story beat is that we know that they teleport, but we need to figure out how to teleport into the Institute. So we talk with Virgil, who is an ex-Institute scientist who has turned super mutant. Don't really understand why a dude thinks it's a good idea to hide in the glowing sea, which is like fends off people because of the radiation when you're trying to hide from a bunch of robots. That doesn't really make sense to me, but whatever floats your boat. But pretty much we talk.
That line alone in this video spawned a years-long beef that I'm still in the midst of with YouTube comments. 5-year-long beef talking about arguing that one thing.
with Virgil, he says, oh, a way you can teleport into the Institute is by getting a Courser chip. That'll pretty much allow for you to hone in on the Institute's coordinates or whatever and teleport into them. Virgil had a slight dialogue lock up here, losing about 9 seconds. Pretty unfortunate, but stuff happens, you know? But yeah, pretty much now our goal is to go and kill a Courser.
I like that I call out the imperfections in the run too, and I try to do that in pretty much every run that I cover. When things go bad, that's okay to point out. It's okay.
Vous m'aidez, et je vous rendrai l'appareil. Ouais.
Luckily for us, the place where the Courser spawns is Green Tech Genetics, which I'm not sure if you remember, but that's right where we landed really early on when we did our first punch warp. So we already have Green Tech Genetics discovered. It's that big ugly green building, so all we have to do now is exit Virgil's cave and then just fast travel straight to Green Tech Genetics. And Green Tech Genetics is a pretty cool sequence in the game. There's lots of combat that you're supposed to do there, but fortunately for us, we really just have to, we grab a garbage can and use it to climb up a couple walls, and then we set up a punch warp, and we make a beeline to the elevator, because at the top of the elevator, there's a Courser that we need to talk with. If you don't know, Coursers are pretty much like the hitmen of the Institute. They don't always like kill people, but they like do all the dirty work for the Institute, and they're like the most feared people in the wasteland. But we need to talk to one real quick to try and convince him to give us his Courser chip. But he's all the way at the top of Green Tech Genetics, so as I said before, the first thing that we do is we grab a garbage can, which as soon as it finishes loading, you'll see me do.
This is something I try to do often, and I think I did a good job of it here, where I explain something in advance, and even though I explain it really far in advance, I would talk through it as I'm doing it. So I was like, I'm going to grab a garbage can, I'm going to climb up, I'm going to take an elevator, I'm going to talk with a Courser. And it seems like I'll be explaining it as I do.
So grab this garbage can, run over to some collapsed stairs real quick, slide ourselves up, accidentally bonk a wall, slide ourselves up another wall, and once we're up here, we're going to use a fragment to set up a punch warp right here so we're coordinates. And then just run upstairs and enter an elevator that was luckily open. It's like a quarter of a second time save, half a second time save to have the elevator already open. But we stored our punch warp at a location that was kind of high up off the ground, and that's pretty nice because we need to go high up again in this segment right here. You're supposed to run up a bunch of stairs, or you could item climb up a giant fence wall in the middle, but instead we can just punch warp, drop down, and talk with the Courser real quick. And as soon as we talk with him, we can just take his Courser chip like that, quick save, and we're going to now load warp to Old North Church. Because now that we have the Courser chip, the next story beat is to decode it so that we can actually tell where the Institute is. So I open the door, quick save, or not quick save, quick load. It would be catastrophic if I quick saved right there. I quick load to be the character who now has the Courser chip, and I'll be inside of the Railroad HQ. And now that I'm here, I need to talk with Desdemona and pretty much say, hey, I have a Courser chip, can we decode it? And she's like, yeah, we have the perfect man for the job. And that's where you meet Tinker Tom. Also, while I'm here, I'm going to be grabbing a bunch of random items for scrap for building the teleporter very soon. But pretty much Desdemona has a long dialogue sequence, but if we just sleep for an hour, we skip all of it. And then we're able to shoot these guys to skip a couple dialogue lines because they're technically considered like part of our faction right now. So we can shoot them up to 4 times before they'll aggro. On the 5th shot is when they're going to aggro. So we can shoot them to skip a couple dialogue lines. And we just met Tinker Tom, who in French sounds like a Sims character. But he has a lot of dialogue to go through at this moment, but we're able to skip it by just fast traveling to the Railroad HQ, which is where we already were. But if we just fast travel to it, exit, and re-enter, then when we walk through the other side, Tom should hopefully be on the correct dialogue line that we can load warp out on to advance the quest. Grab a couple things for scrap. Run up to Tom to hear it, because sometimes the subtitles don't register, but he was saying a line where he says solve for N, and that's the line that we need him to be on. So I made a quick save and immediately loaded the save right outside of Virgil's cave, because now we need to go and talk with Virgil again. Because now, Virgil will give us the plans for the teleporter, now that we've decoded the Courser chip. And when we have the plans for the teleporter, we're kind of going to make a deal with Virgil and say, hey, if you give us the teleporter plans and whatnot, we'll find you your serum inside of the Institute so that you can become human again. He's like, spoiler alert, we actually don't help out Virgil in the speedrun. That would be a little slow. But yeah, we get the plans from him, and then right away, as soon as the quest update pops up right there, we make a quick save and then load our Old North Church save again. Because we're going to load warp back into the Institute. It's faster to load warp here as opposed to leaving and then fast traveling back to the HQ. So I just load warp back in, and then once I'm inside, I run up to Desdemona again and say, hey, I have the plans for the teleporter. Can we do something about this? She says, sure, talk with Tom. So then I'll go and talk to Tom, as you'll see in a moment. And essentially...
Oh, I want to be adding things and make this not just Tomatoina sits here and watches this video, but at this point, like, there's not too much more to add to this, mainly because I don't know, I want to in these I do want to talk more about the actual process of making the videos, but this is the only video, with it being the first one, and how I talked about earlier how I recorded it, where there really wasn't much of a creation. Like I said, it was a 2-day thing. I recorded the run on the first day, recorded the audio on the second day. All my other ones have more scripting to it, editing, all that kind of stuff. more editing as time goes on as well. So I in the future ones of these, I would like to talk about that. And I'll ask now before we even get to the end. Do you have anything that you want to hear me talk about when I go over these older videos? Leave a comment, please. Comment either on YouTube, Patreon. Let me know. Hey, it would be interesting if we heard you talk about this reasoning for it. Like maybe once I get to the actual speedrun explain stuff, talk about why I picked a run. All that kind of stuff. Like, just let me know anything you want to hear me talk about when I'm looking back at these runs, and not only kind of breaking them down from a technical aspect where I can learn things on my end that will help me improve long term making these videos. Maybe just, tidbits that you guys want to hear. I'll try and come up with them as I have them, if I have them. But like, again, there's not much to talk about this run. In terms of the production. So yeah, just anything, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll try and if you have any questions specifically to this, I'll try and respond. If you have anything that you'd like to see me try and talk about more in the ongoing videos, please let me know, and I'll make a note to try and hit those beats when I do the next one next month.
He'll say, all right, you need to build this platform, and you need to build it at like kind of a base you have. And luckily, as I mentioned so long ago, grab these things for scrap real quick. As I mentioned so long ago, we discovered Sanctuary on the very first cover slide, which is where we're going to build it. Normally at this point, if you didn't have Sanctuary, you would need to fast travel to Vault 111 and then run to Sanctuary, and that loses you 17 seconds. And I need to drop a military grade circuit board right here, because the military grade circuit board, the game will automatically scrap it for 5 circuitry if you need circuitry to build something. And we do have other items for circuitry, but the game will pick the military-grade circuit board over those items to scrap, and we actually need the military-grade circuit board itself when we're building the teleporter coming up. So we build this first stage of the teleporter, which is a stabilizer platform, is I think what it's called. And we fast travel back to the HQ, where we're going to grab the circuit board again that we had just dropped and talk with Tom. And Tom will pretty much give us the final plans. And now that we have the circuit board again, we can build these final components. But Tom will give us the final plans for the teleporter. We'll be able to complete the teleporter building process, talk with Desdemona, and then teleport to the Institute.
There's a lot as well, a lot of little things I'm not even explaining. And if like I were to make this video again today, which again I made one 2.5 years ago, one of these 2.5 years ago on this exact run, even then I wasn't pausing, but I would pause a lot today to explain this stuff, because there's a lot of small things that I'm doing, like turning away at certain times to skip last bits of dialogue. So there's a lot that's gone unexplained in this run, but the general structure of the run is for sure explained, albeit not up to my current standards for sure, but it's definitely explained adequately, however low that bar is. So there's definitely a lot that's gone really unexplained. I don't want to have this turn into me just being like, oh, I didn't explain this, I didn't explain that. I want to nitpick this, but not to a certain extent. I want to kind of highlight the big takeaways I'm having, the big notes I'm making, be they positive or negative.
Building the teleporter right here, it's actually, personally, it's my favorite part of the run. I think it's the most fun. I
do like that though. I like being able, I think that it's beneficial to the viewer to talk about what parts of a speedrun the runner enjoys, what they dislike. I think that it adds not only a little bit more personality to the run, but it reminds you that there's a person doing this. Everyone has different likes and dislikes with the speedruns. I'm probably the only runner whose favorite part is building the teleporter. It's kind of a lame part of the run, but it's just really satisfying for me. So I like being able to talk about that, add a bit more of the human aspect to it.
Runner kind of builds the teleporter in a different style. Everyone has their like preferred patterns to build it. This is just my own. I like going in a circle with the power generators, connect everything with the power lines. But pretty much once it's done building, then I talk with Desdemona. Shooter wants to skip a line that she started up that I didn't need her to say. And then once I'm done talking with her, normally once I step onto the platform, Tinker Tom has a really long dialogue where he's like, all right, firing it up, stuff like that. But if I pull up the map, as soon as he finishes a line, after like, he'll always be talking while you're off of the platform. And as soon as you step onto the platform and he finishes a line, then the game will lock you in place on the platform. But if you step onto the platform and pull up the map as soon as he finishes the line that would lock you in place, and then you fast travel away, then it'll skip all of his lines and it'll immediately teleport you into the Institute, which is really cool. But this is also where the game gets really messy. So we're in the Institute, right? We're doing this whole thing with the railroad. We load the holotape, expecting the railroad to come through, and we're going to save the day with the railroad. We're going to destroy the Institute. But who other than Preston Garvey shows up instead? And from him, we're going to get the fusion pulse charge to place on the reactor to blow up the Institute. But the reason why he comes in and not the railroad is because, one, we stole the targeting sequence, or the targeting relay off of Sturgis. Also, I set up a punch warp here and set up a hard save for load warping. But pretty much when we got that quest, nuclear...
Again, like I talked about earlier, earlier in the run, I would have... The past 10 minutes of the run, it's just like, okay, I'm doing an okay job of explaining things as they're happening. And right there, I made a point of interjecting. I set up a punch warp here. The whole like glowing sea part, I would have explained that like a minute later.
In the sewer, it gave it to us. It gave us the quest in the middle of the quest line. Wait 1 second. I'm gonna show right here. I just did a jet jump, which is the reason why we need a jet. It extends our jump just slightly by jumping a little higher and slows down time, so we can access this door way down here. But anyways, when we got the nuclear option quest line so long ago, it gave it to us in the middle. But because of the way that quest is set up, you were supposed to be able to complete it with 3 people, those three factions, with those 3 factions being Minutemen, Railroad, Brotherhood. But because we got it in the middle, the game didn't know who to assign it to us with, so it kind of assigns it to us with both the Railroad and the Minutemen. So we're completing the game with both the Railroad and the Minutemen right now. I trigger my punch warp. I set up my cover, or not set up my cover slide. I make a quick save and then load my Old North Church save right away because after we set the bomb on the reactor, now we need to go and talk with the.
I jinxed myself because I was like, yeah, I triggered my punch warp like 10 seconds after it happened.
Railroad. Typically, Desdemona gets teleported into the Institute here, and she says like, "Tom, bring us back," stuff like that. But it's kind of bugged out, and if we go to the Railroad HQ, she'll actually be inside of there, and we can skip all of her lines saying, "Tom, bring us back," by just shooting her to aggro really quickly, and then putting away our guns so they forgive us immediately, and this will teleport us back into the Institute. Like I said, there's a lot going on right now on the internal side of this quest, and the game is just trying to connect a bunch of strands right now. But as soon as I teleport back into the Institute, I quick save again. I load the Old North Church save one last time, and I load warp into the Railroad HQ one last time because I need to talk with Tinker Tom really quickly. And excuse me, when I talk with Tom, I need to wait for him to finish certain lines. I can say, "This kid just showed up. They say he's Fixer's son."
I can't believe that's in the video. Excuse me.
And stuff like that. I need to wait for him to finish these lines. I could shoot him, but I wanted to play it safe. So I talk with Tom, say fired up, and as soon as I finish that line, the quest stage updates. I quick save, and I load the Institute save, because I now need to load warp back into the Institute and get teleported to the Mass Fusion Executive Suite, which is where the detonator is for the bomb to blow up the Institute. So I actually missed the load warp right here. It's only fitting that the only load warp I missed is like the one really easy one that is with a door. And it's the last one in the game, but luckily I was able to hit it going back the other way, so didn't really lose too much time there. But it's only fitting that the one missed load warp is the last one. But now the game is pretty much done. All I have to do is step onto the teleporter area right here, and I'll get teleported to the Mass Fusion Executive Suite, and I hit the button and watch the fireworks. But yeah, this is Fallout 4 any percent full game. And if you haven't been able to figure out by now, the reason why I said at the beginning this run is so monumental is because it's the very first 39-minute run. The very first run under 40 minutes that anyone has achieved for this game. I put in a lot of work with this game over the past year since I started running, and so have a lot of other people in our community. A lot of people have spent hours just like looking into things in the game, trying to figure out how things work, trying to find all those little time saves. The people who have found the most time save in the past year to help make this possible are Jenny and Brongle, the 2 dudes I mentioned earlier. They found the most time save out of anyone in the past year. Yeah, 39:45. Accounting for the late timer at the start and the early timer at the end right here, and the early timer at the start, it's like a 39:45.41. But yeah, this is Fallout 4 in under 40 minutes.
I can feel it wash over me.
Very cool.
The heat, the force, the radiation.
If there's any more.
The fear. I see my only because I know war.
Yeah, that's it.
War.
That's it.
Never changes.
Oh. Definitely have a lot of takeaways from that. Just over a page of notes, and I write small. It's a small notebook. Yeah. So good takeaways. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, again, leave any comments for if there's any direct questions that are had for this, what I just covered specifically, let me know. Otherwise, comments for things that you want to see me talk about in these future video reviews, revisitings. What's the word I'm looking for? Like not retroactive. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. anyways, yeah, if you have any stuff like that, let me know. Let me know for sure. But yeah, till then, peace out. Have an above average day.